ahead and get started. And
yes, okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. And a special thank you to our Honorable Judge, Richard Cortez. Mayor, I just want to, and Judge, I want to thank you for your very hard work. I know you've been very overwhelmed at the county. And I just want to mention that, I mean, you're our superstar right now. You're doing an incredible job. And even my sister heard it on CNN the other day that the mayor of Houston commended you, that how you were leading our county, and you know, and that it was that we should all follow. They should all follow your leadership. So thank you again, and welcome Mayor Darling as well.
so,
Well, thank you, Sally.
you know, obviously, Judge, thank you for taking the time to do this with us today. For those of you that are joining us, this is a series that we do weekly called McAllen Talks. It's a way just for us to have conversations with key influence makers and leaders in the community and the region. And we wanted to get Judge Cortez on the program and be a part of it, just to kind of share what he sees happening with the county. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges going on today that we're not experiencing six to 8 weeks ago. And so with that, Judge, we're going to have you make a few comments, opening statements. But for those of you who are joining us, if you want to ask a question, if you'll type your question in on the chat box, we'll try to get to those questions as we go through it. The judge has told me that at 11 o'clock he has another Zoom conference that he has to jump onto, so I promised him that we would finish up around 10:55 to give him time to get ready for the next meeting. So with that, Judge, thank you very much for taking the time and for everything that you're doing. And so the floor is yours.
Sure. Well, thank you, Sally, and thank you, Steve, and thank you all the people of the city of McAllen, all the chamber members. I want to thank you for all the efforts that you have done. You know, McAllen's always provided a lot of leadership to our community over the years. I particularly liked, Steve, your Macaleño, why I wear a mask thing. So that's always good information. You know, we are in difficult times, but you know, they're not impossible times. There is a solution. There is a better way of doing it. Is there a perfect result from any action that we take? No, but there's a better result when we take the best action that's available to us. So when there's a lot of differences of opinion, you know, what do? I'm asked all the time, and I'm sure Mayor Darling, all of us in leadership positions, is, well, just do the right thing. Well, if you would tell me what that is, I'll do it, okay? But every decision we make, someone likes it and someone doesn't like it. But here, I think there's conclusive evidence that there are certain actions we can take as a community that will not only protect us, but will protect others. And hopefully, discussions such as this will help us get to that point.
All right, Judge. So starting out, one of the first questions we had, what are you anticipating happening in the county in the next 30 days in regard to COVID-19? Obviously, you know, I know you like numbers, and I'm sure you're looking at what some projections might be, but what can you share with us that you see happening over the next 30 days with COVID-19?
Well, I think the governor is going to have to come to the conclusion that he cannot manage the whole state of Texas by himself. I cannot manage the whole county by myself. I mean, we have over 1 million people here, and we need the help of all the mayors and all the people to help us identify the areas that need the most help and the action that is the best action to cut the spread. And so I believe the governor is going to rethink his position of taking total control of all of the 254 counties in the state of Texas. Already, he is seeing the consequences of action that has been taken in opening up, you know, Texas, what arguably could have been just a little too early. But we know what to do to turn that thing around, and I think once we do that, then we'll start seeing a reverse of what we're seeing today.
Were you surprised when the governor declared Hidalgo and Cameron County to stop elective surgeries in the hospitals? And what's been your thoughts on that type of action taken by the governor?
Well, my thought is very simple. I run a business And I think I can run my business the best. That's why it's my business, and I should decide how to run my business. So hospitals here is a very mature and established industry. They deal with matters such as this all the time. I think some elective surgeries, even though they're elective, they're important and they're necessary to the person that needs it. So I would like to see the hospitals have more control of matters such as that. When this thing started back in March, one of the things that I did, and what some of the meetings that I had, was really speaking to these hospitals and see what plans that they have for diversion of patients should the hospital be overwhelmed. And all of them had plans. All of them had several models that they were predicting that certain things were happening. So, and each one was different. Each one was similar, but each one was different. So to me, I believe in more local control, because I think we're in the battlefields. You know, it's difficult to see what's happening in the battlefields from a distance.
So, you know, Judge, you had mentioned the hospitals each having a plan. You just update everybody on this call, the status in terms of the number of patients in the hospital, the number of patients in ICU. I know that's something that you're tracking on a regular basis. And is there a threshold where you say, okay, we're approaching a critical moment and we need to take additional actions?
We're there now, Steve. We're there now. If you would see the availability of beds, and there's different types of beds. You know, you have your ICU beds, so you have your other emergency room beds, and etc. So there's different categories of beds that are available. But not only do we need those beds and we need that space, we need the people and the staffing to take care of them. So the first thing that I learned in speaking to all the members of the hospital was not only the need for space itself, but more importantly, the staffing. That's why I immediately last Friday sent a letter to the governor, to the commissioner of public health, and the chief of emergency management that we needed help. We needed staffing. So already today, as of yesterday, and I smile because these nurses are coming from all over the United States. Some of them flew into Brownsville because, you know, they said they're coming to South Texas and they see Brownsville come up in the map, so they flew into Brownsville not knowing that they were 70 miles from McAllen. So we had to go pick them up, and then since they didn't have a return trip, they couldn't rent a car. So it's simple things like this that complicate it. But the good news is that there are at least 400 nurses are already expected to be here. Also, as a result of that, we received 10 ambulances. Right now, we have ambulances parked outside the hospitals because we can't get the people in there, sometimes as long as 6 hours. So it's a problem. And servicing the sick, you know, we're going to figure it out. Everybody will be taken care of. But the best way to mitigate this thing is just trying to keep people from getting sick.
So, Judge, you mentioned the 400 nurses and healthcare workers. Does it cover that cost, or is that coming out of the county's COVID-19 care money, or how is that cost going to be taken?
No, that's state and federal money. That's being paid. We asked this for the STARS, which is a state of Texas request.
Okay. So the next question, Mayor, obviously, excuse me, Judge, the next question, obviously tax revenues are going to be impacted by COVID-19. What changes to the county's budget do you anticipate for the coming year?
Well, Steve, you know, that's a $64,000 question. It was a lot easier to be mayor of McAllen than to be county judge of Hidalgo County. In McAllen, you know, we even made money in the golf course. We own an airport, we made some money there. We had a bridge, we made money there. We had hotel occupancy. Well, we have no hotel occupancy tax. We have no sales tax. We only have property taxes that fund the county's budget. That puts a tremendous burden on us because we also have 38% of the people who live in Hidalgo County are in poverty, according to the records that I have seen. So when people are in poverty, they put a tremendous strain on county government because we have to provide a lot of services to them. So it's going to have a very, very significant effect on our budget. And unknowns to us, we're building a new courthouse. Well, guess what? The new courthouse is bigger, larger, and we're going to have to, pay more electricity, pay more sheriffs, pay more janitors, pay more, power. All of those things are going to add at least $5 million. And in addition to that, we added 2 new county court of law judges because, we just keep growing and growing and growing. That's going to add another $3 million. So just right there in the near future, just $8 million that we're going to have to come up with. We're also pretty well full on our jail. So it's really creating a tremendous problem for us to balance our budget. But in answer to your question, what are we going to do? Well, Steve, I don't know yet. We're starting our budget process here pretty soon. Well, actually, we've already started it, accumulating data, but we don't have a choice. We must create a judicial system for the county. We must have a detention center for the county. We must have a county clerk. We must have an emergency management department. We must have a healthcare stuff. So these are things that we must do. Unlike cities, you can charge somebody money to go collect their trash. In the county, we can't. The county has no ordinance powers. So right now, McAllen, as I remember, and I don't want to give up any trade secrets. Well, anyways, I think it's public information. We made money picking up people's trash in the city of McAllen. Well, we lose $8 million every year in picking up trash in the rural areas. So these are huge challenges. That's why I wanted this job. I wanted this job because I didn't need the job, but I wanted it because I had experience in trying to manage money, manage taxes, and come up with the most efficient and effective way of doing things. And I think we're making some progress in that. But it's very difficult when you have a horizontal government of 40 different elected officials that basically I can't tell or say too many things to them because they've been elected and they have control of their own budgets. So it's been a challenge, but I think we're making progress.
So, not to put you on the spot, so to speak, but do you anticipate?
Oh, really? Okay.
So, do you anticipate a reduction in revenues of anywhere from 15 to 20%, in terms of your scenario planning, or do you anticipate we're gonna try to budget based off last year's numbers?
I anticipate a reduction in revenues because, as you know, well, not that you know of, but the county has been budgeting approximately 4% increase in just property values. Well, what happens, and I've always told them, and I've always cautioned them, real estate is cyclical. Real estate is cyclical. You cannot assume that real estate is going to grow 4 or 5% per year. There's going to be a time you're going to hit a recession or a change in demand for real estate. Well, guess what? You know what's happening to retail. Brick and mortar retail is losing half of the growth in retail sales, to Amazon and internet. So what does that mean? That means that demand for commercial real estate is going to go down. So if the demand for commercial real estate is going to go down, the value of commercial real estate is going to go down. So then if we start losing jobs, 1/3 of our jobs here in Hidalgo County are to retail. So we start losing retail jobs. Guess what happens? We start losing the demand for housing. And the average price for a house here in Hidalgo County, I think it's $130,000, $140,000. So that's not your gated communities. That's your normal people. So having said that, I'm expecting not only a decline in the value of real estate, a decline in the growth in real estate additions.
So I have a question from one of the listeners. Is that, obviously with the possibility of school coming back, can the county mandate or demand that the school districts have the teachers and students wearing masks, or is that falling then to school boards and cities to implement? I guess the question is who can dictate or direct it, whether we're wearing masks and those type of situations.
Well, right now, I can only tell you as it stands today. As it stands today, the Texas Educational Agency makes those decisions along with the governor. And, you know, my personal position is that I'm not going to get involved personally as a county, hopefully, with the business of school districts. I think that that's why people elect school boards, and I think they should make those decisions on themselves. I think the only time that I would imagine even trying to intervene in any of those actions is we know that they're totally being careless. And I think as a society, even though they have a right to make those decisions when people are absolutely careless, then I think we should come in and put a stop to it.
Judge, one of the questions we have from one of the listeners is how many tests are being given in Hidalgo County, and how many more, and what do you anticipate in terms of needing more tests? I mean, what's the level of testing that you think the county needs to have in terms of the COVID-19 response?
Sure, I anticipated that question, and starting Monday, the military is going to be here, and we're going to start testing, in additional testing, almost 5,000 per day. If you go around all of our testing centers right now, I mean, there's lines and lines and lines of people waiting to get tested. So no, I see testing to be, you know, to grow here in the next couple of weeks. The problem that we're having is that it's mostly private testing. And so we're trying to increase that to have more public testing. We also need to be better organized because in some instances, you know, the vulnerable people that we have are the elderly, the obese, the people who have diabetes, heart conditions, or pulmonary conditions. Well, we need to figure them out. We need to figure who they are first. So we have two lines. We have a line of those type of people and the other type of people because we need to serve those first.
So one of the questions we have from one of the listeners is this year's property value statements went out, and obviously everyone saw an increase in property value. And with everything going on with the pandemic, can you explain the process in terms of how the assessment of the property value statements that went out really weren't reflecting current values, but was 2019 property value? Talk a little bit about that process and what happened there.
Sure. Well, as I sit here today, I have to tell the listener that I'm not an expert in that, but here's my understanding of the process. My understanding of the process is the state of Texas came up with appraisal districts for every county, and every governing unit within the county that assesses an ad valorem tax goes through the appraisal district for them to identify all of the properties located in that county and in their particular governing districts to come up with a fair market value. Obviously, there is a debate or a conflict between the needs of the state of Texas and the needs of us locally, because the state of Texas has to give money back to school districts in the event that they don't have sufficient funds that come out of ad valorem taxes. So the state of Texas then comes over here and really looks over the shoulder of all the appraisers in the Hidalgo County and says, no, wait a minute, I think you're being too liberal. I think you're not assessing sufficient value to the problem. So our appraisers here also have to deal with the inspectors and examiners from Texas to come up with the right value. Then there's a process that, of course, if you believe and think that your values are overstated, there's a process that you have in place, and you file a complaint, or I'm trying to find the word to what it is, but you come over here, you show evidence, and you correct it. Nobody, and the value is of January the 1st. So as of January the 1st of 2020, none of these things were occurring. So the property values that you're seeing are not property values based on today's value, but they were based on January the 1st values. So if that's the case, then more likely than not, I think with reasonable probability, you're going to see those values drop in your next tax bill, not in this one.
Judge, have you had any conversations with the governor about freezing property values? I mean, I know that's been a conversation you see in different communities across the state of Texas, and do you think that's a good move?
You know, Steve, first of all, you've asked two questions. One, have I had a direct conversation with the governor? The answer is no. Have I had conversations with people that represent the governor? The answer is yes. As you know, there's two segments to communicating with the governor. There is a policy section and then there's a political section of part of this thing. So we're talking about policy. To me, you heard the speaker speak very badly not too long ago about what was going to happen to cities and counties. You remember that?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember that? Okay. So that kind of tells you what, thank you, Mayor Darling. Thank you, Mayor Darling. So that kind of tells you what they think of us. So here's the situation we have. They control us. They tell us what to do, okay? But they don't allow us to take any independent action. But yet, guess who gets the blame? Why do I say that? Because we have unfunded mandates that they send us. They say, oh, wait a minute, it's unfair for poor people not to have legal representation. So you know what? Taxpayers of Hidalgo County, make sure that you pay for the lawyer that is going to represent that person that went to steal from you, okay? That now he's in jail, the car, the policeman, the gasoline, to arrest him, the jail that it's in, the medical examiner that has to go examine that person to make sure that that person is ill. While you're incarcerating him, we have to feed him. Guess who pays for this? Okay, us. But who makes us do those things? The state of Texas. So do we have an imperfect system? Absolutely, we have an imperfect system, okay? And that's why we would like to have a little more local control so that we can take the evidence that applies to us and make the best decisions as opposed to having somebody from Austin tell us what to do and then might have an absolutely very little idea of what the reality is.
So, Judge,
but I really don't have a strong opinion, Steve.
Yeah. So judges, you know, COVID-19 is changing obviously the way we interact with each other. What's the county doing to minimize the interaction between citizens and employees of the county and moving more things online as far as transactions or things that can be done online as opposed to being done in person?
Well, as I said earlier in my discussion, we're a horizontal government. We have a district clerk, we have a tax assessor collector, we have a district attorney, we have different layers of governments and departments and governments. And by law, they are the custodians or the gatekeepers of those particular things. So they decide what they want to do with the staff. We are recommending that we have kind of an ABC schedule in putting, you know, having half of our employees at one time and half out and trying to work, you know, out of the homes. Right now, I'm in my home, and this technology is great. I'm not going to show you because I'm in shorts if I get up, but you know, it's not a bad way to work. So I think we all are trying to learn how to work from a distance. We made it mandatory for all the employees that work for the county to wear facial covering. Once you enter even the parking area to wear facial covering, we think that that's there. And of course, as soon as we have any suspicion that there could be, you know, some illness or whatever, you know, to send those people home. But, you know, this is a cultural change for us. I mean, we're all used to being free and doing things like that. But we all know now that we're going to have to learn to work on this environment. I rather learn to work in this environment than shut down your business because you don't know how to do that.
So obviously with the COVID-19, there's now, you know, you're starting to see gaps in things where we have shortfalls. Wi-Fi connectability is one of them. Moving forward, what areas do you see the county stepping in and trying to fill those gaps in terms of either services or processes that you think would be critical in terms of moving the region forward?
Well, that's a good question. To me, our future is going to depend on how well we attract investment to this area. We cannot create the jobs that we want. We cannot have the prosperity that we want without having outside investment come here. So we have been very fragmented in bringing in investment here because we're always in competition with one another. Evidence from Bass Pro went to Harlingen, Costco went to FAR, as opposed to other areas. To us, I think we need to take a more regional approach to bring in investment to the Rio Grande Valley. I think we have to take advantage of the assets and the strengths that we have here to bring them. Because here's what I tell the policymakers or the policy people for the governor. If I have 38% of people in Hidalgo County that are in poverty, and we have over 90% of the people that live in Hidalgo County are ethnic is Latin, it's Hispanic. Well, in the last census, 42.5% of all Hispanic men living in Hidalgo County that had already reached the age of 25 do not have a high school education. Okay, and if the threshold for being in poverty for a household of 4 is $25,200, okay, you do the math. If you're working 40 hours a week, 50 weeks out of the year, and multiply that times 10. That's $20,000. $10 an hour is a pretty good hourly wage here, but you're still in poverty. So the only way that we're going to bring investment here is we have to have the workforce that can bring value to a manufacturer or to somebody else. So we have to really concentrate in trying to be better at predicting what the jobs of the future are going to be, as opposed to continuing to move in the jobs of today. The jobs that we have here in Hidalgo County are in 3 categories: retail, healthcare, and government. Okay, well, retail is in trouble, and who wants a lot of retail jobs because they're kind of a lot of lower end. So those jobs are not going to get people out of poverty. So if we're having to pay millions and millions and millions of dollars every day to help those people in poverty, then we're always going to be in the bottom of the tier here because of that. So the county, along with the cities, have to come to the realization that we're going to have to do a better job. We're going to have to do a better job in preparing ourselves and packaging ourselves to bring that future investment. Because if we don't do that, then we're not going to have a good future.
So, Judge, what as you look around the state, are there other governmental entities or states that you think are doing a good job of handling the COVID-19 in this moment, and things that you're pulling ideas from that you're saying this, we need to be doing this here in our region?
Steve, I can't point to any particular place. I mean, I see the map and of where the hotspots are in Texas, and obviously where the density in population is where the problems are. If you go to the less dense areas throughout the state of Texas, then there's very little infection. So we know that density in population is something that helps in the spreading. I can only tell you of 2 places I know for sure, and that is the Czech Republic and South Korea immediately started to impose facial coverings, and as a country they have done very, very well. So if that's a coincidence, I don't know, but it appears that has helped communities that have imposed that restriction. That has helped them.
There's been several efforts over the last month or so about defunding the police departments and sheriff's office. Do you anticipate or something like that happening in Hidalgo County?
Absolutely not.
Good enough. Judge, I know you were elected with several goals in mind that you wanted to achieve. With this pandemic, with the COVID-19 pandemic, what have you decided that we're going to have to wait till later to try to do those goals and objectives as opposed to right now?
Steve, I had 4 goals when I took office. I wanted to win the public trust. Why was it important for me to win the public trust? Well, if you don't trust me, and then I cannot govern well. And we have a lot of history of people not trusting government, and sometimes for good reason. Okay, so if we were going to move forward, it was very important for us to gain the public trust. The second thing I wanted to do was, look, you have already entrusted us with a certain amount of money. Our budget is about $220 million per year. So you already sent us 210 or 20 million per year. Are we using it effectively and efficiently? If not, shame on us, because then we're wasting it and we're not putting it to good use. So I wanted to be able to look into that and make sure that we were being efficient and effective. The third one was, I knew that poverty was a big drain on our ability to move forward and get prosperity. So I wanted to reduce the level of poverty. It was interesting to me that some of the comments when I made that as a goal, well, what can government do about stopping poverty? To me, was a real interesting, comment by some citizens. And then the fourth one was to bring investment, to bring investment. Obviously, it was taken a little while for me to make the transition of city government, which, believe it or not, the city government code has different rules and regulations than county. So I was going through that process, and Lord and behold, after 1 year in office, this thing hits, and pretty much it's taken almost my entire time. But having said that, I think that us taking advantage of our location continues to be a plus. We're sandwiched in between Mexico and the United States. That has to be a plus. We have warm weather that we can be productive, most of the time. We have a tremendous amount of people here between the ages of 15 and 25, which a lot of people are looking. And also, when you have young age groups like 15 to 25, just remember when you were 15 to 25, how much money were you making then compared to what you're making now? So retailers and people like that look at those statistics because they say, hey, those people normally, in the normal course of business, they're going to be earning more money in the future. So that is a growth rate that is really predictable when 70% of your economy is made up of personal consumption. So I think we need to sit down and take advantage of those things and be able to learn to compete, with other areas better than what we're doing now.
A question from one of the listeners is asking about the international bridges. Obviously, Mexico plays a big part in the economy here. Judge, what can you do to help kind of move along the discussion and actions as far as the bridges being open to non-essential travelers from Mexico returning to the RGV?
Well, this is a very good question, and I appreciate the question. As you know, the city of McAllen owns 2 international bridges. I believe there's 5 international bridges in the county, and if you add the Evanos ferry, then we have 6 international crossings. I've made a lot of studies and a lot of research as to the impact that Mexican shoppers have, and it goes anywhere between 20 to 40% of our sales are attributable, to Mexican shoppers. So obviously they are a big, huge component of our economy. What I have answered in a similar question is, what's the difference between allowing somebody from Mexico to come in here than having somebody from the United States, go shop or go to a store or whatever? Okay. So to me, we have to show the feds that people, that we can accept people coming in from Mexico safely if we take the precautions necessary in order to be able to do that. So it's a real easy decision for someone to say, well, I don't want to fool with that. Well, but they're not suffering the consequences of being lazy and trying to solve the problem. Says, well, I'm just not going to let them in. I think Mayor Darling and Mayor Ambrosio and Farr will agree that, hey, we need to find a way how to be able to let the people from Mexico come in here safely so they can continue to be part of our economy. That's a policy decision that we're all going to have to come together, and hopefully, if they can come up with a solution, maybe we can give them.
I'm gonna have Mayor Darling jump in on a minute on this topic, because I know this is something he's been working on. Mayor, you want to make a few comments about that, kind of what you see happening?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it doesn't make any sense to us that you could fly into Austin or Dallas from Mexico on the same visa that you can't cross the border. And so we through BTA and TBIC and the judges on the TBIC board, I think still, you know, talk to Washington about it. It's really a kind of a political issue of the travel ban. And, you know, we just don't understand why it is. And when we were first measuring travel related COVID, the Americans had unrestrained access to Mexico, and they had relatively very few travel related cases. So it wasn't, it was more political than it was a safety issue. And to this day, they still have access that Mexicans don't have into Mexico. And why would we let Americans go back and forth and not have a health reason? Now, we want to be careful. We don't want to stop that too. But I mean, the point is it's not based on health if it's if under the existing policies that are allowed. And so we have small businesses, you know that, Steve, that probably are not going to reopen unless we get Mexican travel back after July 22nd. My briefing calls in Washington indicate that there's not a lot of talk about it, and the department, it's really a White House issue. CBP has not had much input into that issue. They don't have a problem with Mexican travel, but they don't have a lot to say. So we'll probably go up against the deadline in July 22nd, and it'll be some sort of political decision based on whatever criteria they're using. I don't know what criteria they are using.
All right. Great. Thank you, Mayor. Judge, so one of the listeners asked a question in terms of the, you know, requiring folks or asking folks to wear a mask, but then also the penalties that could be, I guess, imposed on businesses for not enforcing the mask wearing. Could you kind of clarify that a little bit? And how could something like that be enforced through the county?
Well, again, the county is made up of 22 municipalities in a rural area. We have approximately 650,000 people in the county living in municipalities, and 350,000 people living in the rural areas. We simply are going to have to rely on the public safety departments of this municipality to enforce any rules. Okay, and as you well know, it's very difficult to enforce those rules. If you go back into time, I have libertarian tendencies. So if you don't know what a libertarian is, you know, go look it up in the dictionary. Meaning that we want less government interference with our lives. So it was very difficult for me to make these restrictions and impositions on people. So when the governor took away all our rights to do that, we basically went back and trying to tell people and said, look, take personal responsibility, do these things. Well, you know what happened? Nothing, okay? And some famous person, Aristotle, I think, said, if you want to promote something, reward it. If you want to discourage something, punish it. So there has to be some punitive ability for us, you know, to punish the wrongdoers if this is going to be solved. So we need the cooperation of everyone. As you know, we have speeding limits and stuff like that. Most people honor them and some people don't. But I don't know if I answered your question, but the answer is it's very difficult to really
Enforce.
impose and enforce it to cities. But why are we doing this? This is our home. This is where we live. This is where we chose to do business. The only way we're going to go back to where we were before is we have to stop this virus. We have to stop it. And how do you stop it? Well, you stop it by taking the necessary precautions to do that. So all we're asking you is to have, take personal responsibility and do the things that we all should do together. And we do them, then we get out of this mess.
And so, Judge, you're basically saying you're encouraging people's better nature to do the right thing by wearing the mask. But then the enforcement really, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying enforcement is really left up to the municipalities in terms of how they want to enforce that rule. Is that basically what you're saying?
In terms of two-thirds of our geographical location, yes. We police 1/3 of the county, which is the rural areas.
Okay. And a second question from one of the listeners kind of goes along with the question about the masks. Obviously there's CDC guidelines that they're encouraging businesses to use and implement. How can you, again, how do you get businesses to follow those guidelines or encourage businesses to follow those guidelines?
Steve, I wish whoever asked the question would tell me how to do that. I wish anybody out there would tell me how to do that. Okay. Because that's the problem. That's the problem that we're having is we all know what to do. Was it by coincidence that on May the 1st, before the governor took over, we had single digits people in the hospital, single digits, very low people in ICU, and a very low per weekly infection rate. Okay, and someone says, well, because you weren't testing anymore. Well, no. Hold on just a minute. The fact that we weren't testing more didn't have any effect on the people that were sick enough to go to the hospital or be in an ICU. So even if we didn't test anybody, if you were getting sick because of this virus, you would be looking to go to the hospital. So obviously we did not have the infection rate that we're having today, and what caused it. Okay. We went through a lot of pain because of the closure that we did, the shelter in place and whatever. And, golly, was it the right thing to do? Well, we were all learning together. And sometimes if you look at history, success follows failure. So we had to try something and then adjust and modify our actions. That's why when people spend all their time criticizing people that make decisions, okay, that's a waste of time. Spend your time in trying to help us solve the problem, because if you have a solution to the problem, I'm going to listen to you. Why should I not listen to you?
So, Judge, what outcomes, given everything going on with COVID-19, the challenges with revenues, what outcomes are you most committed to seeing happen for the county? As you scan the horizon right now, what are the most important outcomes that you want to see happen for the county over the next 12 months?
I think the best thing that I think we're going to come out of this pandemic is the confirmation that all of us working together, the 22 municipalities, the county government, the state government, the federal government, will give us a better result if we're working against each other. I think that I received invaluable information from some of the mayors. I thought working together to try to come up with the right policies for our citizens worked. If that works in managing and handling a pandemic such as this, it's going to help us in our economic development efforts. It's going to help us in healthcare. It's going to help us in educating our people. It's going to help us in all those things if we just learn to continue to work together. That's what I see. When that happens, then we're going to create the environment that other people want want to join us, okay? If we keep telling people how bad we are, if we keep telling people how corrupt we are, then what makes you think that we're going to be attracting people from some other area to come to the environment that we're already telling them is not a very good environment? So we need to do that, but we need to do that honestly. We need to do that because it's true, because that would be a false statement to tell somebody that we are that. Okay, so we won't tell them the truth, then let us earn the truth. And the truth is we are a community that's desirable. We are a community that's going to help you in business, going to help you raise your family. So when we define that and we get together and do that together, then we will achieve all the goals that we can possibly have, but not until we do that.
You know, Judge, you mentioned collaboration being very important to our future and moving forward. What other groups do you want to convene and bring together and kind of help get everybody aligned in terms of outcomes and directions that you want to go? I know you meet on a regular basis with the mayors in terms of the cities, but obviously it goes beyond just the elected officials. Have you given any thought to about who else you want to help align with to try to move the county forward in terms of the cities and the direction everybody's going?
Well, I think we first have to convince ourselves that there is no short-term solution to a change from where we are to where we want to be. That it's going to take a long-term plan to turn the corner. I believe there's three components that are going to affect the future of us and the county. One is the aging of America. The aging of America is very important. Very soon, if we're not there now, 1 out of 5 Americans is going to be over the age of 65. Why is that important? Well, those were people that were very productive members of our society that are now reaching a retirement level. Well, I can tell you that I spent a heck of a lot more money when I was raising my family, buying refrigerators, cars, batteries, tires, and stuff like that, than I am now as a single person with no debt. Okay, so that's going to have an impact. That's going to have an impact on our economy. So the next thing is income inequality. Here in the Rio Grande Valley, I'm telling you that if we do not solve the problem of poverty, it's going to cause a huge problem to government, because people in poverty have no other choice than look to government for benefits. But the last one is that we're moving to automation and robotics. The jobs of tomorrow are not going to be the jobs of today. So if we don't get in the bandwagon of and bringing in our academic people to help us identify, you know, what is happening with automation and technology, and how do we get in that game? How do we identify the people that are already in the advanced stages of developing that new norm for us, and how do we compete with that? So I ask you, well, who in the heck is responsible? Is it Steve Elenius? Is it Mayor Darling? Is it Judge Cortez? Well, who in the heck is responsible? And therein lies the problem. If you don't fix responsibility to somebody, then who's responsible? And I think that it's, you know, people like you, Steve, and myself, and Mayor Darling, we're going to have to figure this out and get together and says, you know what? Let's fix responsibility. Let's get together and do exactly that, because it's not one person. It's all of us together.
So, Judge, so where do you draw inspiration from during this moment, you know, this pandemic moment? Where are you drawing your inspiration from as you look to try to lead and move forward?
Well, where we all draw the inspiration, and that is God's commands to us. It's to worship me above all, but very second to that, you minister to the needs of my people. So that's where we are. We're in the business of serving people, and I get pleasure out of that. I just hope I do it well.
I know the mayor's still on. Mayor, I want to give you a chance if there's anything that you want to say that maybe we need to follow up with some of the comments that the judge has made.
No, I just support the judge. I'm glad I don't have his job. You know, it's tough. I'm glad I don't have the governor's job, but it kind of works downhill. But I appreciate what he's doing and the challenge that we have. I did get some calls from the local hospitals, Judge, And, you know, CMS came out with, I think, 125% Medicare rate for treatment of COVID patients. The problem is a COVID patient is about 3 times the length of stay as a normal reimbursement rate. And so they asked me what I was going to do. And I said, well, I'm on Zoom with the judge. I'll ask him what he's going to do. But I think that's an issue we need to probably address, and including the running out of ICU and isolation rooms here. And
Well,
it's a challenge.
That's my next call. That happens in about 10 minutes.
Oh,
And we're gonna try to figure that out.
yeah, I think it's a state and federal issue just as much as a local issue, obviously. So good luck, and anything I can do, let me know.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, by the way, I'm enjoying my pay better than the pay when I was mayor.
You got to clarify that the mayor of McAllen gets paid $50 a month. So I just want you need to remember that.
Yeah.
Sally, since it's your birthday, we're going to let you have any final comments or anything you want to say before we sign off and everybody. And again, happy.
Should I put on my birthday tiara? I'm having a Zoom birthday party later, okay? Well, no, I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us, and Judge, thank you again for taking the lead, you know, here in the county, and your leadership and your passion. And I know you're working a lot of hours, so we greatly appreciate that.
Thank you, Sally.
All right, well, folks, thank you. Join us again next week, next Thursday, 10 o'clock. We'll have our next McAllen Talks. Again, we'll have trying to keep the topics interesting and relevant to what we're all experiencing. So stay safe, and I hope everyone has a fantastic 4th of July weekend. Thank you, guys.